Welcome to the September Mississippi PowerShell User Group meeting. Tonight we've got Honorary scripting guy Bo Prox, who is going to be speaking on PowerShell and WSUS administration. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Bo.
All right, thank you, Mike, and thanks everyone who's stopped by to check this out. Again, my name is Bo Prox, and I'm going to be talking tonight about managing WSUS with PowerShell using the APIs. And a little bit about myself. I'm a senior Windows administrator. I've been in IT for almost 10 years now. I've been working with PowerShell since about 2009. I came up from VBScript for about 6 months of that. My personal blog is learnpowershell.net. I pretty much write about all sorts of PowerShell things, even from WSUS to the low level like P and Vogue to pretty much anything, as well as WPF. I've been a guest blogger on Hey Scripting Guy for a couple years now. I've done about maybe 14 or so articles for them, for Ed Wilson, on WSUS and SCOM and a number of other items. I've also had a few articles in the PowerShell magazine, as well as PowerShell.org, and all those links on the PowerPoint slide. And as well as also I've been a judge on the scripting games the past couple years. I was also the second place finisher in the scripting games back in 2010 as well. And also I'm a contributing author for the PowerShell Deep Dives book. My chapters on that were TCP port communications with PowerShell and WSUS and PowerShell, which is what I'm going to be talking about again today or tonight. So to kind of get into what WSUS is, it's the Windows Server Update Services. It is currently in version 3.0 SP2, and essentially it's Microsoft's enterprise management solution for patching. And the best part about it is a free software, free download, or it's with 2000 and above, it is a installable role to use for that. And it's used to basically patch a variety of platforms: Exchange, SQL, Forefront, System Center, all different OS types, 7, Windows 8, and so on and so forth. And there's a number of ways you can do the installation of WSUS, depending on what OS you're actually running on. So if you're running on, say, Windows 2003 or even 2008, you can download the executable file for WSUS, the latest one, and install it that way. In 2008, you can install it as a role, even though it's, I believe, SP1 that gets installed, not SP2. And I even have a script, and I wrote a Hey Scripting Guy blog talking about installing in 2003, 2008 using a script that I wrote, which is available for download from the TechNet script repository. And it deals with downloading, depending on if you have the file downloaded or not, on the same path that you're running the script from. It will either download it for you and install, or it will take that existing file and push it out to install, either on a local or remote system. And it gives you a bunch of different options, such as specifying if you want to use a SQL server or if you want to use a Windows internal database, as well as if you want to do a full server installation or just a console installation, which you can then use to manage WSUS from a client or use the APIs. On Windows 2012, you actually can install it through PowerShell again, but I've written a Hey Scripting Guy blog about that as well. And being that it's the latest version of PowerShell, there's no need to download any executable files for that. And what I'm looking to cover tonight will be some basic things, as well as kind of going into more advanced things with reporting and stuff of that nature. But I'll be covering how to create the initial connection, to the WSUS server, whether it's a local or remote system, and looking at the methods that are available on the initial connection and viewing configurations of the WSUS server. I'll be talking about looking at the events on WSUS, looking at the synchronization history, finding out when the last synchronization was it successful, or did it have a failure of any kind. I'll be talking about working with clients and how you can search for clients, how you can remove clients, different ways of searching for clients, as well as the target groups, which is really what's used for when it comes time to approve patches, and how to create, decline, remove the target groups, as well as adding and removing machines from those. Then next up, we'll actually be jumping into the updates themselves, as far as searching and finding what updates need to be installed, what doesn't need to be installed, as well as how to approve and decline updates. And there's a few methods of doing that. And then moving from that, I'll be showing you how to configure automatic approvals using PowerShell. And this is more of a probably recommended approach as far as if you want to automate approvals with WSUS, as if you can specify target groups, different classification of categories that you want to approve for, and all that. And then lastly, some WSUS reporting, where I'll show you how to find out what updates have failed to install since the last patch cycle or last maintenance window, what machines need to be rebooted still from what updates, as well as kind of giving you a view of what you would see on the WSUS GUI itself, the console itself, like how many machines need what updates and stuff of that nature. So we'll get started with the first demo, which will show us how to load the assembly and making the connections. And depending on what you're using for the OS, if you're using Windows Server 2012 and you've got the update services role installed with the tool set for that, you don't even have to worry about finding the assembly to load that up. You just can run an import module with update services, and it will automatically load the assembly up. But for anyone who is on 2008 or below, you would need to run the add type and path and to get to that assembly. So in this case, I'm running on 2012 right now, so all I have to do is run an import update services, and now I have it loaded up. So with that, we can now look at this, and the main method here is get update server, and you can tell, and there's three different ways that you can use this to make a connection. If you're on your local system, locally on the WSUS server, you would just call get update server by itself, and it would connect you to the server. For remote systems, you'd have to use the specify a server name, as well as specifying if it's a secure connection or not.
Hey Bo,
yes.
Is there any way we can zoom in a little bit on it?
Yeah, man. Yeah. That better for you guys?
Yeah, that's better for me. Everybody else good? I guess somebody's typing in the chat room, so
yeah, it looks good.
All right, awesome.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Okay, and then for the remote systems, you have, if you're doing a default WSUS installation, you'll be hitting on port, I believe port 80, which is default, and you can just specify false, not unsecure connection, and make your connection to it. And it comes back with an object. And differences, and just a side note, the differences with what you see on 2012 versus 2003, 2008, are like in this case, you see in 2003, 2008, you would see a lot more information pop up initially, and it becomes more noticeable as you're working with the commandlets for update services, or even working with their types. They use a different type format, and they have, instead of using the raw type objects, they have their own types, which actually disables a lot of the methods that I'll be showing you with the API. So it's one thing about if you're working with the 2012 WSUS server and you're using the update services module, that you won't have all the capabilities that you have with the API. And if you're using one of the other ports available, like if you're using 443, 8530, or 8531, then you need to specify those other ports manually. after you specify whether it's a secure connection or not, and that's how you would connect to any other system. But in this case, where I'm using a remote system, I'm using the default installation, so I'm just going to make my connection, and we can view the connection object, and oops, there we go. And basically, it gives you, it gives you the server name that you're connected to, the port it's connected to, the version of the server, and not really a lot of groundbreaking stuff with that, but.
Hey, Bo, we had a question in the message window. Does the WSUS server have to be at the minimum version to use the module?
Yes, it has to be at least. It has to be Windows 8 or 2012.
Okay, so that's the server side.
Yes.
And the client side, do you just need the RSAT tools or Windows 8 as well?
Windows 8 for that. Yeah, Windows 8 for that.
And otherwise, you use the add type.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And going with the WSUS object, here's where you're going to find really just an amazing amount of methods to work with. And it covers everything from deleting approval rules to creating computer targets to working with configuration. You name it. There's just a whole lot of things you can use to manage your WSUS server. And in this case, I won't be covering just a small handful of these, but the MSDN documentation is excellent for all these to work through. And on my blog I cover some more of this stuff as well between my blog articles in WSUS and the Hey Scripting Guy articles as well. And that brings us to our next demo, which is actually looking at the configuration events on the WSUS server itself. And I'm actually going to show you how to connect to the susdb database as well, and to actually perform queries against that database, which is actually pretty nice because you can actually use a cleanup script in T-SQL to keep your database healthy. So once I'm with the WSUS object now, with the WSUS variable, I'm going to call getConfiguration, which will return back the current configuration of our WSUS server. And a lot of information here, a lot of stuff to go through and look at. You've got everything from your port that you're connected to the location of your WSUS content, where all the patch files are located at, as well as different timeouts for your for revision deletion time thresholds, which that is used with WSUS Cleanup Wizard to determine if a update needs to be removed. Same thing for the computer deletion time threshold. In this case, if a computer is older than 30 days, when you call the Cleanup Wizard, it will remove that client. And these are configurable. You can update some of these. And you can set them to whatever you want to set them to. Obviously, I would call caution when making any configuration changes, just because to make sure you don't accidentally cause some issues with your server. And once you made your changes, you can actually call the save method to save those changes on your WSUS server. And now the WSUS event history lets us know basically what the server's been up to, what's been going on. It has like synchronizations or anything like that. And there's a few different ways that we can work around doing this to find this information. You can specify some date timestamps to basically get a range of what you want to look at, as well as giving some collection of event IDs to look at those as well. But in this case, I'm just going to look at the past 5 days of events and find out what has gone on with the server. As you can see, quite a bit of stuff has happened with it. Let me do that again. But from here, you can go back and look at stuff and find out it's downloading files. Anything that's been approved, it's been starting to download files, and if it's succeeded or not. And you can use this to filter out to find anything that hasn't succeeded, any errors that have occurred, anything of that nature, or if any synchronization errors have occurred as well, and to help with any troubleshooting that might be going on with the WSUS server. And as well, we have, and this is how we get to find the synchronization information. We actually have to call get WSUS subscription, which what that does is that tells us our synchronization schedule, which it tells us, when it was synchronized and if it's going to synchronize automatically. In this case, I don't have it set automatically synchronized. It's a manual installation. Manual synchronization. But you can tell that I synchronized it it finished at 2 o'clock last night. And from there, we call the get synchronization history method, which again gives us, we can specify a date time range to keep it narrowed down to only what we want to see. And in this case, I'm just going to grab everything and run with it. And from here you can see I had one moment where I did actually cancel my synchronization, but the other times I've had succeeded synchronizations. And you can even dive into that update errors and find out, what update failed to download or to synchronize with the WSUS server. And you can actually kick off a synchronization as well with this. If I were to run this, there's a method that is start synchronization, and that will kick off a synchronization for you. I'll kick one off right now. I can show you that. Oops. And the neat thing about this is you can actually monitor the synchronization as it's going. Using the get synchronization progress method. And you can tell what it's processed, what it's doing. Let's put this into a list. And you can see what phase it's on. So it's on the updates phase now, and it goes through definitions, security updates, and all that. And it'll keep going until it's finished. And also the synchronization status, which they show you that it's running, stopped, failed, like that. So you could, in theory, you could actually have a job running or a script running that would monitor that status and basically let you know when it finished if you wanted. And then we can get into the WSUS database configuration. This is pretty neat because this will actually tell you where your server is located at, where that SUSDB is located at, on what server and instance. And in this case, it's on DC1. The database name is actually SUSDB. And on another side note is the SUSDB is a unique database, and it's only for WSUS, but you can't create a different named database for the WSUS server. It's always going to be SUSDB. So if you have multiple WSUS servers and you want to store those on like a remote SQL server, you either have to use those on a separate server or on different instances of the server in order to maintain, the uniqueness of for each WSUS server. And as you tell here, and here, it's used with Windows Authentication, and you can see it's not using an internal database. And with this, we'll use the create connection method on that configuration object to actually get into the database. And we're actually on the database. You can tell that we're connected to it or going to connect to it, but we're not actually, to actually make the connection, we have to call the connect method on that. And once we do that, you'll see that we're connected now. You see our database connection string, what we're using, and from there we can actually start to look at what we can do with this database. And in this case, I'm going to just look at the schema tables to find out what I have access to. And so I'll use a get data set, and with that method, you'll supply your T-SQL statement, and you'll need to supply a command data.command type of text. And now we actually made our query to the database. We have our data, but of course, it's not exactly that user-friendly, not that readable. So we'll go back, and I want to see the tables and rows. So I'll hook into the tables and rows, and now we can see what is actually in that database. We can see all the tables on the SUSDB database. Everything from the update table to computer target tables to everything else, which makes it nice that you can actually, on the database level, actually perform queries and find out what you're looking at and look for various things. And in this case, I'm actually going to, I want to look at all the clients connected to the WSUS server. Before we do that, I need to close my command, otherwise it will yell at me for not doing so. But again, a T-SQL statement, I'm going to select everything from the computer target table, and I'm going to look at, and we'll see our two servers that we have. We have DC1, and we have my laptop as well. And you can do this for anything, any of the tables. You can search for things. You can even update the table. You can even perform actions against the table as well. In this case, I've got a script that I wrote on TechNet. It's called invoke WSUS maintenance, and basically what it is that there was a T-SQL job script out there that performed basically we indexed everything and took care of all the fragmentation on the database. And I took that, encapsulated in a here string, and using my database connection, I'm able to push that and run the T-SQL script on that database to perform the cleanup, all the cleanups on that. There were some issues with that. With this, you cannot use. This had a print statement on it, and it would use the go statement that would use like an OSQL and whatnot. And it basically what happens is you cannot output anything like using print or anything like that. If it outputs any strings or any text, it will choke on that and will not work. So if you do use anything with the T-SQL, just make sure that it's not trying to output anything. And we can actually give this a run and show what it does. I guess. And I'll use the invoke just so you can actually see what's happening with it. I mean the verbose statement. And depending on the performance of the database, what's hitting it, are there other databases on it? It may take several minutes for it to run, or it may finish up fairly quickly. It really just kind of depends on what's going on at the time. And so now I'll be showing you basically what you can do with the clients and the groups and how you can perform queries against clients, find out what clients you have, what groups you have, and basically doing your administration with that. It's definitely taking longer than what it usually does. We'll just kill it. It's most likely because I have the that synchronization still going on right now. go ahead and give that another minute. But and essentially what I'm going to be covering with this is we'll be looking at how you can pull all your clients from WSUS, find out, and it gives you, there's a lot of information with that. It gives you, you can find out the domain name, you can find the IP address, the OS type, and even some BIOS information on that as well. That's going to take, just move this over. And actually, we'll go ahead and try to kill that synchronization, just so that way we can move on.
Hey, Bo.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of questions in the chat. What type of rights are required to run these against your WSUS server?
You need administrator rights. There's also, there's two groups you can have that are out there. There's a WSUS. There's a couple of WSUS groups out there that you can use. Typically, administrator rights to that server to at least to have access to the database as well. You have to have access to the database with your account.
And then the other question we have is, have you created any fancy slick HTML reports?
I have actually done that. I don't have any on me right now, but I have a couple of reports. One right now that does almost like a reconciliation against the Active Directory and WSUS server to find out if there are any clients that haven't checked in WSUS yet that have been added to Active Directory. And that's the one I've done thus far. Although I do have aspirations to do some more in the future on various things such as failed updates and stuff of that nature.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, and now I've stopped the synchronization using the stop synchronization method, and so that way it stopped. We can actually look at it, and we should see that. The progress has stopped that, and we look at the status. Is now done. It's completely not processing. So now we can continue on with this. So with the clients, there's a couple ways you can look for clients. You can use the get computer targets method, and if you call it just as is, it will reach back and grab every single client that you have on your WSUS server. Or there's an optional, you can set up a computer target scope, which I will actually demo that in a little bit, in which you can specify more values, such as you can specify client name, you can specify, a last reported time range, as well as any target groups that it may be involved in, a member of. But in this case, we're just going to look at everything we have, which isn't a whole lot for my lab environment, but you can tell we have two machines, again, like we saw with the SQL query. My IP address, what kind of OS I'm running, and if I were to call this just as is, you would see just, again, a lot of information here. You've got, the full domain name, you've got the make and model of the system, BIOS info, just a whole lot of things you can look at and work with. As well as, to successfully talk to the WSUS server, reported time, and all these make a difference when you're trying to. You want to make sure everything in your environment is checking into WSUS or not. So, and I'll definitely touch on more on that later. But you can also specify computer targets by name, and this is nice if you know what you're looking for. It's really the quickest way of getting to a system and looking at what you have. There are caveats to this. It doesn't support wildcard. It's not like a wildcard type of command, so it has to be the exact name. If you even go one off on it, it should and will fail. So if I just try to one off like that. It's come back and says it can't find it. And really what it's doing is because it's calling to the database. And it's basically, I want to find just this machine. And if I can't find anything that's like it, then if I can't find it, then I don't want anything at all. To get around that is you can use the search computer targets method, which it is a nice way to find systems that you don't know the full name for, but there are some caveats with that. The main caveat is it forms like a like statement. Basically, it's like as I'm going like star C star. So it won't know if you just want the in. If I give it like an in name, like if I have like Bo-PC, if I want to give it just PC, and I had other machines with a PC anywhere in there in the name at all, it would pull every single one of those. So just for the C, it's going to pull both of my systems, regardless of where it's located at. And unfortunately, there's really no easy way other than just to do a nice, like a regex style filtering, or even like a star name or name star type approach. You'd have to kind of narrow down using this method, and then take it through a where object and filter it down more to what you're really looking for. And now we'll look at the computer scope. This is what I touched on just lightly with the get computer targets. And the computer scope object is very nice. It gives you the opportunity to specify more options for your query. So you can specify the name includes, which is, again, it's like the like statement. If you put a name or a part name in there, it's going to grab every single thing that matches that name. So it's definitely kind of use with discretion. You can specify, the last sync time range, last report time range, even like different installation states, such as if I wanted to find out if it was a failed installation or excluded, or if I want to exclude installation types. And these come more into play later on when I talk about reporting and how you can use these to find out what has failed or what needs a reboot. But if I leave it just blank as is, it's basically the same thing as if I just call get computer targets by itself. It's going to grab everything, and it's going to, depending on how much stuff you have, it may take some time to pull that. And in this demo, in this level here, I want to find anything that has reported in the last 3 months. Actually, that has not reported in the past 3 months. I'm using the two last report status time, which means anything that, in this case, hasn't reported back since, June 10th of this year. It's going to let me know, and it will generate the report. It will list out every machine that I need to investigate and find out why it hasn't reported, and either, for one reason or another, and either take action to remove it or, fix the issue. In this case, everything's reported back since that time, so we'll see. Computer scopes, 2 weeks last. I'm sorry. So yeah, anything that hasn't reported back, it will show up. Anything that has reported back, in that time it won't show up because that's the endpoint for that. If I would leave that if I had to set that to now or in the future, it would show everything in there. Same for the last sync time. If I want everything that hasn't synced in the past 3 months, I would throw this in there. That's where I would recreate the new computer scope and say to last sync time. So if it hasn't synced since June, then again there's an issue. I need to find out what it is and how to actually take care of it. And removing clients is actually pretty simple. You just need to specify your client that you want to remove. In this case, I want to remove my own laptop. I keep it here, and there is a method called delete that I can use to effectively delete the machine from WSUS on that, and do so. And depending on how the SQL database is doing, I have seen cases where this may fail because the database is just overwhelmed at the moment. But it's rare, but it does happen. But now if I go back and look for my client, it's no longer there. It's gone. So, and this will eventually check in again. Force it to check back in, so it'll show up again in a little bit. So, I mean, that's really all there is for that with working with the clients. You can search for them, you can remove them. So the next thing is to look at the target groups, and this is really where you will determine how you approve patches. And it gets a little hairy here. You have, in this case, I have, my all computers, which is the default, and unassigned computers. Those are the two default groups that exist in WSUS. And I have another one called servers that I created recently. And you can find, there's not a good way to actually find a specific target group. There's one option, it's called Get Computer Target Group, but the problem is it requires the ID, which is this ugly GUID here, which doesn't really help out too much. So I would recommend use the word object to search for them, or an even better approach is to actually write these onto a hash table, and then it's a one-stop shop for everything, and then you can just look at those and pull what you need. And I actually will show you that in another demo coming up. But in this case, I'm looking for the all computers group, the standard group. That is default. Everything's a part of that group by design, so a machine's always going to be here. And you can find out what's actually in those groups using the Get Computer Targets method. And my machine's saying, see my laptop's back in action again. You can use those to find out what's in those groups. Find a nice way to find out what you have and if anything's missing. And creating a new group is actually very simple to do using the WSUS object. There's a create computer group, target group method. There's a few options here. You can specify a name, which is what the name of the group is going to be. You can actually specify to build a group underneath a parent group if you so choose to want to do that. I won't do that here, but it just requires you to specify the group object, which in this case would be the all computers object, and the name. And in this case, I'm just going to create myself a Windows 2012 group. And we can verify that it actually exists, and it does exist. We have a new target group. And with that group, I'm going to add my laptop back into it, my 2012 server. And it requires, to add the computer target group, it actually requires an actual client object. You just can't specify a computer name and have it automatically added. It unfortunately just doesn't work that way. So we have to specify, we need to get my computer, my client, and just real fast, just to show that nothing's in it. We're going to add the target. We're going to add the client to the target group using the add computer target. We will go back, and now my 2012 server is now a member of that group. Removing a client target group is just as easy as it is. I can run through that real fast and show you. Remove computer target. Again, it does require a computer object. And remove it. And it's gone. So there's each of those approaches for adding and removing. It does require the computer object, and I mean, there's no easy way to do it any other way than just with that. And this actually is something with the other side note is that the WSUS module for 2012 does not currently support adding or does not support creating target groups. So they've only got like 8 commandlets, and I will find that link and post it later. But there's a link that they actually have on their blog, which they're looking for people to give them ideas of what to add for the next rollout for new commandlets. And definitely, I think I may be the only one who's actually written to that yet, and it'd be great to have more people doing that to get the new stuff out there. I'm not actually going to do this, but there is a delete method to delete the group. It's pretty simple. You just have your target group object, and you just call the delete method, and it will delete the group. Any clients in that group will be just, they will be taken out of the group, and they'll still be in the all computers group. So you won't actually lose any computer targets if you delete that group with clients on there. So next up is actually what the biggest thing in WSUS is updates. And I'm trying to show you how to find updates, how to even look at where the actual files themselves are located at on the WSUS server, as well as how to approve and decline updates. So there's a get updates method, which if you call that, it's going to pull every single update that exists on your WSUS server. Not really the recommended approach. It does take time, and you do have the possibility of it actually causing a timeout. I've found that after 3 minutes of trying to pull the updates, the database or the API will just choke up and say, I can't do this anymore, and eventually time out. So it's pretty much hit or miss with that. Instead, you have the search updates method, which you can specify basically anything you want, any type of text. Operating system name, platform type, KB article, anything you want to find, and it will go out and look for that, and it will pull all that information for you. So we'll go ahead and look for anything that's 2012 and see what we get. And depending on how many updates there are, how the SQL database is getting handled, getting hit, it may take some time to pull that information from it. But once it's done, you'll have your list of all your updates that you can look through and decide what you want. As that's going, we'll just and there's another option with the get updates. You can actually get update. You can look for it by GUID. Again, that's not the best approach. It's hard to read GUID, so you don't know what you're really looking for, and it's there for the internal. It doesn't really translate well to when you're trying to manage WSUS with PowerShell. It's still going. There we go. Actually, if we view the updates, we're probably going to see quite a few. Yeah, so in this case, we have it pulled back 103 updates. And let's we'll just check out one of the updates and just see what. And a lot of information on these updates in this. You have everything from the title, even a description of the update, what it does, what it's out to do, the KB article, security bulletin number, just a lot of information that you can work with to see what you have. There is a creation date and arrival date. The creation date I want to touch on is when the actual update was authored. It was when it was created, and the metadata was added to WSUS. The arrival date is when that update was downloaded, or when the update schema, when the metadata was downloaded to your WSUS server. So that's one thing. I know one thing to keep in mind when you're looking for updates, and if you're looking for, for instance, Patch Tuesday, you want to use creation date to find out everything since Patch Tuesday, what has been out there. Another piece is the state property. It's somewhat misleading. The not needed is only applicable to how your WSUS is configured. If you configure to host all the updates, all the patch files on the WSUS on Microsoft server, and you only download those as you need them, it's more useful. Otherwise, if you're in a situation like enterprise management where you store all your updates locally, it's not really it's not really useful to look at. And it does have other states such as ready, which means everything's been downloaded, it's been approved, it's ready to go. There's no issues with it at all. But looking at that update again, you can see that we can call the get installable items method, and this is where we actually can look and find out, where these files are located at and what languages are involved with those. And we dig deeper into the files, you can actually see where those files are located at. We can see that we have like the cap file for this particular update, and we can see where it's located at. It would be on my content folder, and in that those god awful folder and update names. But it's useful, like if you don't think that update's downloading, or you're positive that update's there, and you want to, or it's not installing for whatever reason, you want to just grab the file itself and just try to push it, to force it manually. This is where you could go to find out where it's located at, and where you can download it and actually do a forced install. And with the get updates, again, if you call it by itself, like I said, you grab everything under the sun. But it also accepts a whole mess of parameters, such as date time ranges, approval states, category collections, and classifications, which is fine. But if you mess with all this stuff, you may as well just go ahead and use the update scope object instead. It's going to give you all the same stuff you already have that you could use there, and it's just easier to manage. So we'll create the update scope, and we'll check it out. And it's similar to the computer update scope. You have the very similar things, just a few different variations, such as update approval actions, as well as like update types you can specify. But in the same way, you can find out what you can set. Some of these aren't settable, but the majority are. And depending on what you're using, like text includes, again, it's essentially a like statement. So once you put them there, you guys just keep in mind that, that it will grab everything that matches that text of what you put in. But in this case, I want to see what needs to be approved still on my system. So I want to look at my approval states. And I have a few options here. I have, any, decline, not approved, still update approvals, and latest revision. In this case, I just want any that's not approved. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into as my approved states. And the same goes, I need to find anything that's not installed for my include installation states. And you have a few to work with. You have unknown, not applicable, downloaded, failed, pending reboot, all. And again, I just want anything not installed to look for. So we'll go ahead and piece that together. And I'm looking for, and I don't want to look at every single update that I have. I want to give a small day range within the past month. So we'll go ahead and add that in. So now you look at your update scope, and you can see that not installed. I want to find one of those installation states. My approved states is not approved. And I want anything from August 10th on.
Hey, Bo.
Yep.
Hey, for the approvals, how's the .NET stuff better than the commandlet in the module?
It's pretty much the same. I mean, the .NET, the module follows the same process as the API. The no caveats with the API is that if you have 2003, 2008 WSUS servers that you're running, that is hosted on, you won't have that access to that module. But with all that, I mean, the module itself does support it, the approve, update, and decline update, is I believe what they're called. And they have essentially the same type of parameters that they just, and I believe what they do is they just use the same update scope, they call that in, and perform the same method of doing the approval and declining. If you're using the 2012 with the update services module, that would definitely be a good way of doing it in this instance. But if you're not, then you would have to revert back to the API to make this happen.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And with that, and now we can look and find out, using that update scope, we'll find out what updates are required, or what the WSUS server thinks we need to approve. And we've only got, in this case, we've got 7 to work with. And going back, and we can actually, let me do one last thing. And you find out these are the ones we need to actually approve to push down these updates to our clients. And going back to that not needed property of the updates, you can actually find out if you're using your server as a local store, or if you're just relying on the Microsoft update services WSUS server to do that. And look at the configuration, and it's the host binaries on Microsoft update property. And if it's false, like mine is, that not needed is pretty useless. But if it was set to true, then that would be something more useful for you. And actually, starting to approve updates, some updates may actually require a license agreement to be accepted first before it will let you do the updates. And of course, if you do it through the GUI, this will do it for you. But in this case, I don't recall if any of these may need that. Yeah, so none of these need that in this case. But it's very simple to approve them. You can just work through each. You just do a for each and work through each update and just say, accept license agreement method. Of course, if you use a PowerShell v3, then you could just, call that updates.accept license agreement, and it would just, go through all those without any issue. But in that case, we won't have any need for that. And we're going to go ahead and approve, or look at the approval for one of these updates. And depending on what you're looking at doing, you can either approve it for a target group, or you can approve it for the target group and give it a deadline of when it needs to install. The target group requires a target group object. So again, you have to go back to your target groups and find which ones you want and have that object saved and then supply that object. Unfortunately, there's not a way to specify a collection of target groups that you want to approve on. It's not on the API, so you actually have to do a for each to go through each group, actually go through each update, and then go through each group that you want to approve it on to actually do the approvals. It's a little painful, but it does get it done. And you do require an update approval action of what type of approval you're going to be doing with this. And there are a couple ways of doing that. There are a couple of approvals that you have, or approval states. You have install, uninstall, not approved at all. Most times you're just going to use install. I've never used uninstall. That would basically, if the update supports installation, it would actually uninstall the update from the client or clients. Not approved would basically just reset everything back to its original state. And all would, I believe, I never actually tried all before. All, I'm not quite sure what that does. I've never used it, never had a need to use it. So in this case, and I went back to the target groups, and you can definitely do a where object and filter out I prefer to do a hash table to get all that stuff. And that way it's just a matter of, doing a hash target groups and specifying the group name, and I have an object already waiting for me. Less work to do, and it doesn't keep pounding the system every time you want to try to do an update. So in this case, we'll actually go ahead and we'll do the approval for this. We're going to approve that update. I'm actually going to change that to servers, and let's actually go back. We'll go back up to actually approve it. If you specify the install only for the approval, what it's going to do is it's going to basically use that all computers target group and just set, okay, anything that's under this group, which would be everything, install and force it down the tree. And I'm missing something. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it actually does require the target group. That's my fault. So yeah, I would specify install. And in this case, I want my I want my servers. And it's done. And it actually gives you returns an object that tells the state it's pending, what it's actually going to do the action, who actually did the approval, or who approved the updates, which I'll actually go back and show a report on to actually find out who installed what updates. The target group is specified, however, it is a GUID, so you would have to go back and you would have to translate that from its GUID to its friendly name. The go live time is your deadline. It actually tells you when it's going to go, when it's going to install, which is right now. Deadline is, if you don't worry about deadline, its deadline is, till the end of the world, essentially. But now I want to, and again, going back to the updates, to actually install all the updates that you want to specify groups. In this case, I want to go with servers in 2012. It takes 2 for eaches, essentially, one for the update to go through each update, and then for each target group that you want to install the update on. It's, like I said, it's not the prettiest approach, but it's what works. So we can go through here and group. Oh, I did the same thing on that. Always helps to have the same named object. And now we have our approvals going through. And like I said, each one returns back, the object, the approval object that you can choose to save if you want to, and generate a report later on. Like if you have different jobs, like a scheduled job set up to install, to approve updates or decline updates, you could actually save these and actually spit out a report, HTML report actually, to your sysadmins on what got declined, approved, or anything of that nature. And speaking of decline updates are very simple. We just call the decline method, and that's it. And if you have replica server, you can specify true to fail to that, to tell the replica server to fail as well to decline those updates. Don't really need to do that in this case. On that update, and it's done. It's been declined. And it's all there is to it. Automatic approvals, I actually wrote this was actually in my chapter for the PowerShell Deep Dives book. This is a nice approach to set up a WSUS approval that occurs, on every time a synchronization occurs. It will go through and look at the new updates, and it will approve those updates based on what you specify. You can specify target groups, you can specify classifications, categories, all that stuff. And it's very handy, very good to use. It's my approach versus doing a scripted job to approve updates. There are some downsides to it. You may get updates that you don't really want per se, like Titanium updates if you don't have any other systems. So you would have to go back and decline those as well once it's done. But automatic approvals, you actually have one by default already listed that exists. In this case, I already created one already, but this one, the default automatic approval already exists. It is the original one. So if I were to jump into that one, and also methods, you actually look and find out what the categories are that are supported that it's actually looking for. In this case, there's nothing. Same for computer target groups. You can find out what target groups that it's looking at. In this case, all computers. Update classifications. You can find out what it's looking at. In this case, it's looking for the critical updates as well as security updates. And you can also, and a lot of these, you can actually modify these on the fly. So you can actually modify the target groups, modify the categories and all that of that nature. You can save it, and if you want to run it, you would call the apply rule method, and to run it on schedules outside of when the synchronization occurs. But we actually go ahead and create our own rule, and in this case, we'll go with my one I created first, and we'll throw one out. So I have my random rule I created. I want to see what I actually wanted for classifications. In this case, I was looking for critical updates, security updates, service packs, and updates. And I want to see what my category is. What was I looking at? And I'm looking at different platforms, SQL Server, Windows Server, Office, and what target groups what am I looking at using this against? And in this case, I'm only looking for the server's target group, so anything outside of that target group would not be affected by this rule. And now we can actually go and creating a new rule is pretty easy. I mean, it's a little bit of work involved with it, but it's not too bad. The first thing to do is we need to give it a name, and we'll use the create install approval rule method. And it does output an object when it's created, so we want to keep that because we'll be using this object to perform all the other configurations. And in this case, we only want categories that are like Windows Server 2012. And we've got 3 of those. We have in this case, we have language packs, 2012 R2 and 2012. Not too concerned about those. And we just can't. And another thing is what the rule object is. You just can't give it like all these as a collection by itself. You actually have to create an update category collection object to support that. So we create that object. Nothing in it right now, but then what we'll do is we'll add all of those categories into it as such, and now they're all there, and then we can actually set those into the new rule. Now we look at the new rule, .get I think actually it does not generate all that stuff until later on. Yeah, in the new when you create the new object, it won't add all those other methods until it's actually fully created. But we do the same thing for the classifications. I just want critical updates, service packs, updates, security updates. So I'll look for all those. Make sure I got them all. There they are. And same situation as a category. We can't just apply we just can't give it that collection. It won't accept it. We have to create a specialized collection just for that. It's the update classification collection. We'll create that. We will add those classifications in. And now we'll actually add those to the rule itself. And then we want to see, well, what are we going to run this against? And in this case, I want to run this against my, I think it's Windows 2012. Check. I only care about my Windows 2012 group. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and do that, get my target group. And then I can actually now add that group in. And again, like the other ones, they require its own special collection. And now that I have that done, I'm pretty satisfied that's all I need to do. That's all I care about at this point in time with this rule. I need to enable it and then save it. And once it's saved and enabled and saved, now you can go and see, I have all my methods I wanted that I was looking for before. We can verify, my categories, what I have, classifications, all that stuff is there. It's there that we have. And as I said, what you can do is you can actually apply the rule, and it will go and actually go through that process of actually approving updates that meet that criteria. And it goes through and tells you what it's looking at and what it's going for. The next and the last thing I'm gonna touch on is reporting with WSUS. And with this, and there's a lot of things you can do with WSUS as far as finding out what type of information you want to see and all that. And a lot of these are going to require the update scope and computer scope. And sometimes they need both to work with them, other times one or the other. And you can find anything, like in this case, we're going to find out what installations have failed on my server since the last patch cycle. And I've actually intentionally failed a couple patches midway through installation, so we actually have something to work with on this. And update scope, creating an update scope, we're going to look for failed updates only. That's only what we care about. And then what we're going to do is we do have to go through all the computer targets. You have to do this. It doesn't support like any collection, so you have to go through each computer target and give it the update scope to decide what it has failed. In this case, we're using the get update installation info per update method, and it requires the update scope. And then from that, we'll actually get our information, what we have, what kind of failures we had, what patch failed, and all that. And with that, and as you see, .NET does not like my system, and it failed pretty proudly. But using this, it tells you exactly the state that failed state, the actual target group that the approval was for, the system name, the action, and the update itself. And There is some tricks that to get the computer. I had to actually go and get the computer target and of that object that it returns to get the full name. Same for the update. You have to pull the update using the get update, and then look for the tower property. The target group, it would have given a GUID, and I actually went ahead and translated that to pull the name. Again, like I said, that's a great method to even as a weekly or monthly report, just to find out where you stand on your environment, what's failed, and so that way you can go back and troubleshoot those failed updates. Another one is, you've patched your systems, you think everything's been rebooted, but WSUS may report that a system may need a reboot still for a patch that got installed. And with that, we'll use the update and computer scope, and we're going to use the installation state for the install pending reboot to make this work. And in the same situation, we're going to feed the computer update scope first into the get computer targets. And just by itself with that will give us our systems that need to be rebooted still. But we can take this one step farther and actually find out what updates are causing it to want to reboot. So we'll go through here, we'll apply the update scope for the get update installation info per update method again. And this time we're going to get back everything that requires a reboot to complete the installation. And we'll go through and we will run that. And you can see that I have two updates, both security updates on DC1 that requires a reboot for it to complete the installation and call good on that. And this one's nice because maybe somebody approved an update that they shouldn't have, or something happened. You want to find out who did the approval and what they did and what was all affected by it. We use the get update approvals method, which requires the update scope to accomplish that. And basically what we can do is you can specify a date range. In this case, I'm looking for 2 months out from anything that's been updated since then. And I'll go ahead and do that, create these, get these going. And then I can do this. I can actually go ahead and run this. But the only problems with that, what I don't like is that you have all these GUIDs. You have the computer GUID, the ID GUID for the update. Not exactly for anything to look at, but I mean, you can see who did it. This is the WSUS server tells you that the W server itself approved these patches, which means that your automatic approval that you have going is what initiated these approvals for these updates. Some you may have, like for instance, I actually approved this update, and in this case I want to go ahead and make it a little bit cleaner to look at. So now you've got, translated, now I've got the actual what update was approved, what target group it was approved for, and then you still have the other information, when it got approved, who did it, and all that. And you can actually specify, you can even narrow down to like what type of actions. You can say, okay, the install or the uninstall or anything of that nature. But it does provide a good report or a good audit of who's done what, and at what time and what was affected by that. Next up, we can do some update statistics, find out what's out there, what's been downloaded, what's failed, what's in a failed state, what's been installed, based on in your environment. And once again, it requires a computer update scope and the update scope. And what we have is we find out this server has 2 patches pending reboot, 8 downloaded for installation, 12 not installed. I've had 9 failed updates, and I have 157 updates installed based on what WSUS has reported, or what it's been reported to WSUS. My this server has a ton of updates downloaded, ready to be installed. And another nice report you can run, to find out where each system stands and to track how you keep up with patches. I can even find what updates, like what update is required by what systems, and I'll use the computer update scope to find this out. I'll do a search updates to get that update, and then I use that update object and supply the computer scope to find out what's required for it. And in this case, for this update for all my systems, I have 2 updates, but I have one that's needed, and then one that's airing out, and that's basically the same update for the same client. So it's not really the best. You have to kind of work with the numbers to find out what's true and what's not. You can also look at the update installation info for that update. Stop that for a second. Okay. Here, it gives you some information. It tells you, what's. Again, you'd have to translate these out to no kidding readable formats, which is done right here. Those goods again. So you actually get something much more readable to look at. You can find out what update it is, the status of it. It's been installed. This one's not applicable on this piece for my 2012 server. Find out what target group they're in. It was approved for, and the approval action for that as well. So I want to look at now, like we pull in the updates, find out what, and it's not useful. It tells you what updates are required based on the scope, like how many you have that are in approved state based on the date range. As you tell, it gives you a number. It's not really useful at all. It just, it serves as, okay, I have this many updates I need to look at, but really, what are those updates? And a little more information. It's more fleshed out with that update. How many updates there are, what's needed. But again, we need to go a little bit deeper and find what those updates are. And now we're able to see what updates we have that need to be installed and need to be approved. And really, my last demo is the update summary report. This one just shows you the status of all your updates that based on what you're looking for, what hasn't been approved yet. So in this case, I have my definition update and another update for Office 2010. And it basically tells you, how many clients need this update. So I have one client that needs the Office update, one that doesn't need it, and I can tell that it's not installed on that client. Same for my definition update for 2010. Again, only one client needs it, and it still needs to be installed. So that's and so that really, that covers all my demos. That took you through the reporting and what you can do with reporting. There's a whole bunch of things you can do with it. You can set up jobs to look at, to send out HTML reports, Excel reports on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to kind of see what you're sitting at with your environment, like anything you need to take action on, and just stuff like that. I do have a module that I wrote. I won't demo that, but it does. I did back in 2010. I had a module that called Push WSUS. It was at the point when the update services module had not been released yet, and this one, and it covered a lot of the things that I've showed you as far as getting clients, improving updates. It's got, I think, like 60 functions, and I've got a few more on the way that I'm working on, and it's Alpha Coplex for you to check out. And I'm always looking for new features, bugs to work out, and all that nature. And these are links to my WSUS articles I've written for Hey Scripting Guy, PowerShell Magazine, and on my blog. So, I mean, feel free to check those out. I cover a few other things that I didn't cover here with that. And again, I guess thank you guys for having me out here. Had a great time. Enjoyed the time talking WSUS. I've got my blog, my Twitter handle, my Google+, my email out there. And then my other projects, I got my Posh WSUS, PoshPeg, which is my GUI for doing patch management. My Posh Event UI, which I just released about a month ago. It provides a GUI interface to working with permanent WMI event consumers. And Posh Chat, which is my PowerShell chat server and client interface.
Okay, thank you, Bo. That was very, very interesting. Do we have any other questions?